everyone, Dr. Ariel Ellis here with another video in our leadership coaching series. Thank you so much for all the feedback that you've been giving me and all the emails and the DMs. I really appreciate it, and even the messages on LinkedIn. I'm grateful that the information that I've been providing to you is helpful, and I want to continue to share as much as I can with you. But today, specifically, I want to talk about a topic that I've been getting some inquiries about, and it is wrapped into the work that I do, so I can speak to it, of course, with experience and with intelligence. But also, I want to speak to it in a way where we really understand how to implement this, and it is executive presence, or some may say executive positioning. This is not necessarily a new term that we've heard. I'm sure many of you have heard it. This is not a new term, or let me say, it's not a new practice. It's actually a new way of packaging up the branding around thought leadership. So we know and understand the concept of thought leaders or thought leadership, particularly for those who are experts in a particular field, those who have a very visible brand as it relates to the expertise that they have, or they're seeking to leverage their expertise in a new way, or even they're already thought of as a thought leader in their sector and their space, but they haven't really shaped their voice around the expertise that they have. So that's what we think of when we're considering thought leadership, or someone is a thought leader in a space. They're able to contribute innovative or disruptive or creative ways of looking at a topic, or looking at a way of doing business, or the world of work, right? And the way we generally see that thought leadership is in speaking engagements, in articles, in books, things of that nature, where you get a chance to communicate the expertise that you have. So that's one of the things that really stands out around how thought leadership works, particularly as it relates to branding. Now, if we were to take this back, one of the things that I did back in my early years as a publicist years ago, when the recession hit, I want to say 2008, I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken. Y'all can Google that when the last recession was, but around that time, my business as a publicist had slowed down significantly, because, again, the resources and the budgeting and the funding around PR and marketing. Generally, we always say PR and marketing is the first thing to go when you need to cut a budget. And so things have slowed down significantly. Things have slowed down significantly. But one of the things that really brought us back, and created an uptick for us in our clientele, was executives who had been laid off, or who had been furloughed, or who had to take a buyout or something of that nature. C-suite level executives, senior level executives, discovering their voice separate and apart from being an employee at an organization. So we saw during that time, and again, we're talking about 15 years ago, pre-Instagram, right around the early stages of Twitter, before we had a lot of online platforms for people to really be able to present themselves as a thought leader, or to consider what their personal brand could be, and even their reputation, their online reputation could be. So this is early stage Twitter, still kind of early stage Facebook, no Instagram at that time, and definitely none of the other apps that we see out for social media now. Or even if you just heard that little click, Slack, like there's no such thing as Slack either at that point. I don't think there was. So I say all that to say that personal branding became a thing. So during those early years, I got a chance to work with quite a few executives on coaching them up on how to build their own brand, by way of their own expertise, without having an employer that they were attached to. And many times there was a fear of individuals expressing their expertise outside of a company. It was as if you needed a company in order to be reputable, like you needed an employer to be reputable and for your expertise to be seen as valuable and useful. And we know that now today, that is not the case at all. So we've seen this evolution, if you will, in the aspect of personal branding for executives. And now we see it coming into or the language coming into more of a space and I would say the kind of the categorization of the work being tagged as executive positioning and or executive presence. And those are really two different things, and I want to kind of tease those out. Now, I have some other content around thought leadership that I'm going to share with you, but I want to specifically focus this video on talking about executive positioning, executive presence, what it is, why you need it, and how you can implement it into your brand as a leader. For the most part, I think that when we think about, so I'll give you kind of a rundown. You all know the work that I do as a DEI expert, but also as an executive coach. And many times in my executive coaching, what I'm doing is I'm not only working with leaders on some of their most significant challenges, I'm also helping them think through ways to present themselves in the marketplace so that their expertise can be positioned, so that as they think about legacy, as they think about the brand, the reputation that they want to get across, this is an opportunity for them to consider what is that marketplace voice that they want to have. How can they move individuals and groups even, or communities or various cultures and subcultures? How can they leverage their leadership, their credibility, and even their creativity to really move these groups or individuals forward in the goals and the dreams that they have, right? So we're really talking about more big picture. So beyond just executive coaching, there can be an element wrapped into the work that is specifically focused on executive presence. I'm going to pull up my notes here. When we think about executive presence, we're thinking about what it means to exactly what it says. Actually, we're thinking about what it means to have a presence in the marketplace. And when I work with clients from time to time, whether it be a public figure, a celeb, someone who say maybe a university president or government official or CEO, you all know I work closely with first generation millionaires of color. It means that there's a voice that these individuals have. And because they already have a platform, it is really important to think through how they're utilizing their voice. So some of those characteristics can be how to present more confidently, how to present with more credibility, how to utilize just their natural skills and their natural personality to really influence others. But one of the key things about this work is it is specifically connected to what it means to build trust. And in that communication and in that influence, how can you build more trust amongst the people that you communicate with? And I would say this too, that executive presence isn't necessarily exclusive to the people that I just named, like the kind of individuals that I work for, or work with rather. But I think it's really important for anyone who wants to advance their career and really make a positive impact. So as you think about personal branding, I also want you to consider that your personal branding is not just a means to an end, that your personal branding as a leader, and however you lead and whoever you lead, you want to really be thinking about what it means to develop an executive presence. This means that you need to have a vision and you need to be able to articulate it well. And it doesn't necessarily also exclusively mean that you are articulating and presenting yourself internally amongst or externally amongst audiences and speaking engagements and writing articles and things of that nature. It also means that you are thinking about your presence amongst the people that you work with. amongst the people that you lead, the teams that you come in contact with, right? Or the individuals that you need to invest in your business, or the people who are your partners, your vendors. And you're thinking about that full presence, if you will, for lack of a better word. You're thinking about that full presence. You're also thinking about how people feel when they're in your presence, right? What is the energy, or what kind of energy, what kind of positioning, which is a little different, what kind of positioning are you grounded in, so that you can think through how people are going to see you and how you want people to see you. Now, I don't think this is an overnight process. This kind of thing takes focus, it takes practice, it takes skill, and it takes really thinking through, like really getting core, like really getting down to the core of who you are as a leader. That is why the coaching element is critical, because once you're coached, or once you're clear in that coaching process and in that counsel process, then you can kind of think through, okay, this is who I am. This is who I want to present myself as. This is kind of legacy I want to build or leave. This is kind of vision I want to cast. Okay, therefore, I need to present myself in these ways, and I need to position myself in these ways. So one of the things that is critical too in this concept, or in this idea too, is that over time we've seen the lack of trust amongst leaders, or lack of trust for leaders. We've seen in various spaces, whether it be the highest, companies, or the highest levels, or if it's just in our local communities, we have a natural respect for those who are in leadership, and have a level of power and authority. But the difficulty sometimes is when that trust, or that respect is challenged based on bad behavior, or based on unfortunate circumstances. And so sometimes that those expectations can be high for those leaders, but it also means that sometimes that trust is low. And so it means that there's a gap. There's a gap between the expectations that the public has for people, while also the trust of, or the skepticism that this individual, this leader, may meet my expectations, or may meet the community's expectations, may meet the public's expectations. And so that's where you think specifically about executive presence, to be able to bridge that gap, right? Because even with social media, even more with social media, there's a demand for leaders to be more visible. There's a demand for leaders to be more relatable. There's a demand for leaders, even to, from time to time, share their personal views or their personal perspective on just life sometimes, right? Sometimes when I meet public figures that I believe personally have had impacts on culture, or even I just admire, some of their accomplishments, I try not to ask them, I try not to ask them questions that I can maybe Google the answer to. I want to ask them human questions, right? Like, I want to think specifically about, if this is my one opportunity to meet, I can't think of anybody right now, but if let's just say this is my one opportunity to meet someone who's made a huge impact in business and in community. And I don't want to fumble that opportunity by, again, asking a question where I can just kind of Google, maybe they've talked about this topic, or Google an answer, right? Or something that they've posted on their IG. Now, what I would prefer to do is, if I follow them on social media, or I know about something that they've done, I want to know a little bit more about that thing. And so I find some type of thought-provoking question to ask them, or I find a way to ask them, you had this phenomenal opportunity and you took advantage of it. How do you think that's going to impact your legacy? Or what's the one thing you haven't done yet that you still feel like you haven't done? Whatever those like deeper questions are, those may not seem real, like they have real depth, but I'm just kind of going off the top. Those things are really critical for leaders. Believe it or not, they're thinking about that. Sometimes you have individuals who are making really big decisions, and they have been blessed to be able to be in these great positions to make impact. And sometimes they don't even get a chance to think about legacy, right? Because legacy ultimately is what others like follow in the footsteps on. They're just blazing the trail. They don't really get to necessarily determine what their legacy is. They just get to build it, right? It's just kind of like reputation. So when we think about that, there's this opportunity for people to know that these leaders, executives rather, are human. And what does it mean to really engage them in that process of not just being, very robotic and stoic and being present on the business side, but also being accessible and real, just human, right? I always talk about the human aspect of what it means to show up in business and in community. But let's kind of talk about some distinctions. So when we say executive presence, what we're simply saying is looking at the qualities and the behaviors and the attributes that really enable a leader to command respect and influence and to inspire that confidence from others, right? You, as a leader, you want people to have confidence in you. And so that's one of the things, those qualities that you have as a leader, that's what really sets you apart and makes you really compelling as a leader. It makes you feel like people can engage with you in either formal or informal interactions. And it goes beyond just appearance. It does their appearance and how you show up, what you look like, that does play a part in it. But then it goes beyond that too. I think it really encompasses your communication skills, your self-confidence, your bravado or your gravitas, right? Your emotional intelligence, and just the ability to be able to connect authentically and just be real and honest with people in a way that makes them feel connected to you. When we talk about executive presence, that's what we're talking about. And when we're talking about it from a corporate standpoint, it's kind of the same thing. We're just talking about it instead of the individual, the company. You want the company to be the kind of brand that people feel connected to, right? That they feel like they can invest in, that they feel like they can engage with. They're really proud of this company. They like the way the company makes decisions, right? They like the way the company makes an impact on the community. So we can talk about executive presence in two ways, but of course, today I'm talking about it from an individual perspective. And then there's executive positioning. Let me go back to my notes here. And then there's executive positioning. Executive positioning is really kind of more so along the lines of thought leadership, like I said earlier. So you have your presence, but then you also have the positioning piece that allows that individual to really be seen as an authoritative or credible or influential figure. And so with the positioning, you're specifically looking at tactics and strategies that allow the executive presence to propel and to be successful. So the positioning and the presence concept, executive positioning, executive presence, they kind of go hand in hand for the most part. And I'll make the distinction here clearer. Executive presence is essentially building up the individual leader to be able to have the control, the charisma, the credibility they need in order to have the influence that they should have. The executive positioning now is a series of intentional and deliberate and strategic efforts, right, in order to make sure that that executive has the credibility and the authority and the influence that they should have. So they really go hand in hand for the most part. So let's talk a little bit about how it how it all works. And so what you're looking at is, as far as an executive, you're looking at a couple of things. You would look at what it means to build an online presence, of course, and develop some thought leadership content. As I said earlier, the brand is personal branding piece around your voice. What is your voice? I used to do a workshop called Vision, Voice, and Values. No, Values, Vision, and Voice. And I think I may bring that back. But what does your online presence look like? Another element in this process is thinking about what does it mean to assess your body language, your communication skills, your problem-solving skills, your decision-making skills, things of that nature. This all goes into the process. And again, as I center this as an executive coach, this is kind of how I'm building this out so you can see what goes into the process. So first you're thinking about, not first, but one, as I go down my little list, one, we're talking about executive presence and positioning, meaning you're thinking about your personal brand and your online presence through LinkedIn, through your any websites, thought leadership content, think pieces that you may write, and things of that nature. Or even if you don't necessarily work for a company, you have your own company, what does your voice sound like in media, right? Expert placement on as a source, and media, commentary on different things, you being a thought leader in a particular space or sector, and collaborating with the media outlet and allowing that media outlet to share your content that you've crafted, right? So again, that's one of the first things I would consider. Another thing I would consider in this process of executive presence and positioning, particularly the positioning part, is again thinking about what it means to prepare and craft and develop and groom yourself to have phenomenal communication skills, phenomenal presentation skills, thinking about body language, thinking about your poise, your positioning as far as your actual physical body, right? Those things are important as well because it all goes into the same package. I also think one of the elements that's important in this executive positioning and executive presence process is thinking about your role and your career goals. And how, as you think about your career goals and the things you want to accomplish, either in the company where you sit, the industry that you work in, the sector that you are connected to, whatever that is, how are they aligned with the way that you want to present yourself? And or how are your goals and even some of the challenges that you face in the work that you do, how does that then influence the positioning and the presence? I think also I mentioned earlier body language and communication skills. Excuse me, I would get tongue-tied on this one. Public speaking, public speaking and presentation skills are critical. So practicing that, identifying more opportunities to be able to deliver talks, speeches, have one-on-one fireside chats, podcasts, things of that nature. And then also thinking about events and even networking strategies. If your company is participates in a think tank or a consortium or a symposium or a conference or something of that nature, what does it mean to make sure that the executives, or you particularly, are one of the folks who gets a chance to present one of the events or speak at one of the events or sits on a panel, right? And even in that event, if it's exclusively an event just for your employees or your investors or your partners and things of that nature, considering what that really looks like so you can kind of get make real connections with people. Again, presence, we're talking about presence here. That event or that networking strategy is just the tactic from a positioning standpoint. But then also if the event is not just an internal event, if it's an external event, like I said, a conference, a think tank, a symposium, whatever that is, or you're there representing your company, what does it mean to, allow your company or create an opportunity for your company to be a vendor or to be a sponsor? And you have a chance to interact directly with the individuals at that event. That's really, really important to, again, gird yourself and groom yourself for what it means to kind of operate strategically in that executive presence. And then also media training. As I said earlier, doing commentary on media, speaking engagements, podcasts, things of that nature, all that stuff goes into the strategy of executive positioning and builds up your executive presence. All right, so a couple of things, other things I'll share with you. I think that I want to share some benefits to this process because you might say, Ariel, I just want to do my job, right? But there's some benefits to this process of taking on executive presence, especially when you are pursuing coaching, pursuing counsel, pursuing community, as you look to organizations to be a part of and go into community with those organizations. there's some benefits to all of this. I think one of the things that should be considered is, before I talk about the benefits, I'll share this. Some of the things that I do with my clients, or one of the things that I do with my executive coaching clients, is we develop a personal action plan. And that personal action plan is an opportunity to establish a roadmap for that executive to know, okay, what are my steps here? What are my action steps? What should I be going after? What should I be paying attention to? Where should I be in 6 months? And then also accompanying the personal action plan with an assessment, like a leadership assessment, to assess their strengths and their weaknesses and their areas for improvement. So think about that too, as you desire or seek out, hey, it's time for me to really lean into executive presence. It's only going to help my business more and more, or it's time for me to do some executive positioning. It's only going to strengthen my brand and ultimately help me accomplish those larger goals that I have for casting vision and legacy. Think about those elements in the process. So benefits, I think I've already kind of packaged up some of the benefits, but one of the ones that I have here on my notes, first one, and I really go hard for this one, it's influence and impact. I know we often kind of operate in a very individualistic mindset, and we often I think we really devalue the importance of community. And I think we really devalue the necessity of interdependence. And so while some of that is actually beautiful, to the distinction that it allows us to live in our individuality, I think it also can be to our detriment. And so what I like to center when talking about executive presence and executive coaching and executive positioning is the aspect of influence and impact. Really, I anchor it in legacy, right? Because without realizing that your story is important, the contribution you make is important. You're inspiring someone. Someone is watching you. Someone needs to know how you accomplish what you accomplish. Someone needs to know that with all that you've accomplished, you still get nervous and you still get a little anxious and you still get a little scared from time to time. That vulnerability that people need to see, and that transparency that they get a chance to share in, is very impactful. And it can be very influential in helping someone along their way. And so that's one of the first things that I think is beneficial. It's really, it gives so much gratification for a leader to be able to say that because I positioned myself, because I created this presence around my brand, because I was coached as a leader, I now can show up as my full self in the world and really inspire others. So for me, that's one of the top benefits. I also think one of the more tangible benefits is just that overall leadership effectiveness. It is knowing that through your confidence, through your ability to make tough decisions, through your ability to problem solve effectively and guide teams through uncertainty, that you get a chance to present yourself more capable or more confident, right? So that leadership effectiveness is critical. I also think relationship building, as I said earlier, talking about influence and impact, the relationship building is important because that authenticity, nobody's buying the fake stuff anymore. We're just not buying it with leaders. Like like the fake personas, or the one trick pony type personalities, they just don't work anymore, right? People want authenticity. So I think the relationship building is another benefit that's critical. being able to build trust, and also thinking about how to collaborate more effectively, how to build partnerships, and then two, how to negotiate successfully, right? So people, we thrive off relationships. Again, as I said, we really do thrive more in interdependence and in community. So I definitely think that the relationship building piece is a great benefit. I also think career advancement is a phenomenal benefit to executive presence and positioning, because when you have an executive presence, you are instantly like likely, you're highly likely, let me say that, you're highly likely to not only have more consideration around promotion and higher level roles and bigger partnerships, bigger endorsements, bigger business deals, bigger investments, because you have specifically positioned yourself based on your knowledge, based on your expertise, based on all the gifts and skills and talents that you have. And so because you've been positioning yourself, people instantly think of you for opportunities. I don't know if it's specifically intentionally, but there's a new opportunity that I have. It's a global opportunity, not a job, but I'm pretty good right now with the clients and things of that nature. But there are companies who ask me to come in house, right? But that's not what this is. But I have an opportunity to make global impact. Let me say that. And you all may see it if it works out. But I have an opportunity to make, let me say, more global impact. And a lot of it, I believe it was just due to years of consistency, the relationship building, but also just the positioning, just the small touches of positioning myself as a thought leader, which made me stand out for this, global, influential space or opportunity. Another benefit to executive positioning and presence is just the communication. You get to be a stronger communicator because you're presenting ideas, you're leading meetings, you're representing your organization to various stakeholders. And so those folks who have executive presence, they can convey really complex, really difficult ideas in a clear, concise, compelling manner. And I think that's really important. So those are the few things I want to share with you about executive positioning. You get more business opportunities. You get, you're well positioned. If you're well positioned, you're instantly thought of as a thought leader. That opens doors and more attention, more attraction for speaking engagements, media opportunities, etc. Now, if you, one that I left out, if you're leading a company, or let's say a larger company or a company where you have quite a few people or you're in a C-suite position, because people see you and they follow you and they're attracted to your expertise, they're attracted to how you present yourself, you get a chance to attract more quality talent to your organization, because those prospective employees are drawn to organizations whose leaders are influential and respected. So that's one thing I left out as well. So that's all I have right now. There's so much more that I could say about executive presence and executive positioning. I think that it creates an opportunity for you to be poised for more effective leadership. You get to grow in your career, whether you're inside of a company, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a public figure. You need to be thinking about who on your team is positioning you for executive presence and doing the executive positioning. Now, this is not exclusively PR. And as a former PR practitioner, I'm not talking about PR. I'm specifically talking about development. This is leadership development. This is an opportunity for you as a leader to develop executive presence in a way where it not only propels your career, but it does more than just that. It sets you up for being able to cast vision. It sets you up for being able to establish legacy. and to really be able to make an impact that's beyond just, your regular business deal or your regular speaking engagement or your regular company win, right? We are in a very competitive business landscape. And leaders who are developing executive presence and executive positioning, they stand out as being more influential, more respected, and impactful individuals who I believe really drive positive change. And I think that's ultimately what we'd like to see. We want to see leaders, again, whether you're a celebrity, whether you are leading a nonprofit, or whether you are a university president, right? Or you sit in the C-suite at a growing startup, right? These things are critical for you. It's enough to do your job. Like, it's enough to do your job. But wrapped into your job, wrapped into the work that you do, you should be thinking about the presence and the positioning. Because again, as you think about legacy, we're not just talking about PR, we're talking about making impact. And people are looking for inspiration. They want to know your story. They want to know how you overcame all the obstacles and the pitfalls and the challenges. They want to know how you went from 7 to 8 figures. They want to be able to see how you were able to innovate and come up with new ideas and take something from start to finish. Your story is necessary. Your development as a leader is necessary. And sometimes I think it's important for us to know that we can't really just get settled into where we are in just one role, that there's more. It's one thing to be content. It's another thing to be complacent. So for those of us who want more, we're thinking about how to maximize every opportunity, right? How to maximize every chance that we have to drive positive change. So that's why I think executive presence and executive positioning is critical. So I wanted to present that to you. I got, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 LinkedIn messages or maybe an email or 2 about this topic. So I wanted to present it to you. And of course, I'm grateful to get an opportunity to share this with my clients through executive coaching. Or to do this work with them. So feel free to reach out to me. My website is arielellis.com, and you can call me there, or you can email me directly at hello@arielellis.com. All right. Thank you. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.